Hey everybody, thanks for clicking on this video. You know, we've seen these things 100 times. The good old pocket-sized survival kit. You can buy these things for next to nothing, and a lot of times they might come free with another purchase. Most of them have the same stuff inside of them, and to be quite honest with you, most of what's in a pre-purchased survival kit is useless. But there are some things in there that might actually save your life, some things that are worth the money. The downside to that, of course, is that some of those items are not as easy to use as you might think. And finding yourself in an emergency is not the time to have to sit down and read the instructions and figure out how this stuff works. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to pull out a handful of items that you'll find in any off-the-shelf survival kit, and I'm going to show you how those items work so that maybe you can store away that knowledge, and if you ever find yourself in a position where you need those items and you need that knowledge, you'll already have it. So let's go through one by one. Let's evaluate these items, see what they are, how useful they are, and how you're supposed to use it properly. First item we're going to talk about is a compass. Now this is one of those misunderstood items. It's something that most people don't really know exactly how to use. They know that it's supposed to point north, but beyond that, they don't really understand exactly how it works. Now, first off, let's talk a little bit about the kind of compass you're going to find in your typical survival kit. Usually, the little cheapies are going to come with a button compass, something like this. It's called a button compass because it's about the size of a button. Sometimes these things will be attached to something else, or they might just be in there by themselves, which makes them easy to lose. Now, I would hate to think that I would have to rely on a button compass to save my life, because generally all this is going to do is tell you which way is north and which way you might be traveling. It's not going to give you a whole lot of options for how to customize your travels. So beyond the button compass, you're going to find a variety of different kind of compasses that are going to come in your kit depending on how much money you spent on it in the first place. I got this one out of a survival kit a couple of years ago, and I thought it was really cool. It's got a metal casing on it. It's a pretty nice compass, and it appears to work pretty well. So we're going to look at this one for our example today. Now, keep in mind, this is not a comprehensive lesson on how to use a compass. This is a very basic lesson that will show you how this thing is supposed to work in a general sense. Now, everybody knows that a compass is supposed to point north. The first thing you want to do when you get your compass is make sure that it's accurate and that it's actually working. Sometimes the liquid that's inside these things will dry up and it makes it completely useless. So occasionally you're going to want to check on it. The first thing you're going to want to do when you get your compass out is you're going to want to kind of turn it a little bit and just make sure that everything's loose and working properly inside. The little arrow needs to be freely floating about in there. It doesn't need to be jamming on anything. You need to make sure that it's actually going to spin and that it's generally going to point in the right direction. You also want to keep in mind that you don't want to get it next to electronic or metal items that will throw off its ability to properly find direction. If you have a compass that's actually worthwhile, inside you're going to find a dial. That dial is going to read in degrees. Once you establish where north is, you're going to use that dial to set your degrees off north. So once you figure out where north is, you're going to turn the dial to indicate the direction you're going to be traveling. So if I'm going that way, north is that way according to this compass. If I'm going that way, then I need to indicate where north is. Then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see I'm going to be walking at 100 degrees. So as I walk that way, I don't have to keep this out. I don't have to walk with it in front of me watching it. I now know that north is that way and I'm walking at 100 degrees. I'm going to get me a couple of waypoints in mind, maybe a tree or some other marker, and I'm going to head in that direction. I can close this up and put it in my pocket. This is where another item in your survival kit is going to come in handy. A lot of survival kits come with a notebook and a pencil. This would be a good time to write down those degrees so that if you lose track of something, you can always go back. Once I get to where I'm going and I know generally where I am, when it's time to go back to where I came from, I'm going to take out my compass, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see which direction I'm facing. I'm going to find my 100 degrees, then I'm going to go 180 degrees in the other direction, which means I now have to find around 280 degrees on the dial. Once I set that and determine that's the direction I need to be traveling in, I'll know I'm going the right way to get back generally to where I started from. Now, of course, you have to take into account you may have stepped off path at some point. You may have gone a little bit and jogged off to one side. So it's not going to be 100% accurate to take you back exactly where you started from, but it's going to get you in the ballpark. Every degree off is going to increase exponentially, which means you stand a chance of being farther off course than you intended. But the idea is to get you back generally to where you started from. Knowing which way is north, east, south, and west is great knowledge to have. And if that's all your compass can find for you, then that's what you've got. And as long as you know which direction you're traveling in, you can generally find your way back. But a little bit of knowledge about how a compass works will go a long way. So this next thing we're going to talk about is your standard issue emergency rescue blanket. It's just a thin sheet of Mylar that's designed to kind of hold in your body heat and buy you some extra time in the event that you find yourself suffering from hypothermia. There's a couple of uses for this. I mean, besides just holding in body heat, you could also use this in the event that you needed to make a solar still. And there's probably 1,000 other uses that most people don't ever think of. If you can think of another use for one of these emergency blankets, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear about it. Maybe we'll do a video just about things you can do with one of these. But for now, let's talk about how to use this thing properly, because there are mistakes you can make with it. In fact, there are deadly mistakes that you can make with this thing. So let's take it out and have a look at it. I mean, it's not like these things aren't a dime a dozen. The biggest negative to one of these things is they are very thin. It does not take much to damage or destroy them. You do have to handle them with a little bit of caution. So you can kind of see it's a very flimsy material. And other than storing in body heat, of course, this thing does become a reflector and it makes you a little easier to see. So this is what we've got. Got this big sheet of space age looking stuff, and essentially you're going to wrap it around yourself and use this to hold in your body heat. It's a very simple kind of thing. In fact, I've seen videos where someone will take one of these and sit on the ground, drape this over their head, and put a tea light candle in front of themselves. That puts off a little bit of extra heat that adds to your body heat, keeps everything kind of stored under the blanket. So let's talk about the mistakes that people make with these. When you're using the emergency blanket, you want to wrap it as far to the outside of your body as you can. By that, I mean, if you're in a sleeping bag, you want to wrap it around the outside of the sleeping bag as opposed to putting it in the sleeping bag with you. With your clothing, you want to put it on your outer layer. You don't want to wrap your body in this thing and put your clothes on over it. And the reason for that is that it does not breathe at all. Your body still needs to breathe no matter what kind of circumstances you find yourself in. But also you have to let a little bit of body heat escape. Otherwise, you'll find yourself building up so much heat that you'll start to sweat. And in a situation where you could find yourself freezing to death, you don't want to create additional moisture on your skin. If you wrap that around your torso and put your clothes on top of it, you're going to generate sweat. And then as the temperature drops, that sweat is going to freeze. And as a direct result, so will you. So when you're using the emergency blanket, wrap it around the outside, find a place to sit down, put it over your head, or if you're continuing to walk, just wrap it around yourself. Avoid that instinct to wrap it too closely to your body. Give your body room to breathe. Give your body the ability to evaporate sweat as opposed to storing it up, and you might just survive this one. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can be made aware of all upcoming videos. Also, check out our Amazon wish list in the description box. It's just a list of items at all different price points that you can send to us to help this channel along. Next up on the list is a rope saw. These things come in a lot of kits. Some kits don't have them, but a lot of them do. It's a fairly cheap item that's easy to throw in here and make people think they're getting their money's worth. You know, that's one of the problems with store-bought survival kits is they are something that's kind of thrown together so you think you're getting a value, but a lot of stuff in it really just is useless. But let's look at this thing. These aren't the greatest in the world, but they do have their use. Problem is that a lot of people don't understand exactly how it works, and you can make some pretty bad mistakes with it. So we're going to open this thing up and see. Essentially what we've got is a couple of rings on the end and a length of wire teeth in between. And the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're holding it correctly. Even some of the marketing material has people doing this, where you're basically holding it in your fingers. You do not want to do this. This is so bad for your fingers, and the potential for injury is great. And not to mention, it's not going to take long before you end up with some serious joint pain as a result of doing that. So what you want to do is find you a stick, something about like this, break it in two, and you're going to put a piece of the stick through each end of the saw, like this. Then you're going to use the sticks as handles. Now, you need to be very careful using this thing that you don't bind it up and you don't try to cut through anything that's too thick, because this thing will easily break. Rule number one to the rope saw is manage your expectations. Don't think you're going to cut a tree down with this thing, because you're just not. In fact, you want to stick to as small pieces of wood as you possibly can. Things that are too thick to break with your hands, thin enough that you can cut through them with reasonable effort. Keep in mind too that in a survival situation, every bit of effort that you put forward, you're burning up energy and you're using up the food that you have in your system. You don't want to bite off anything that's going to require too much of an effort to get it done. Find smaller pieces of wood to process with this thing and you should be okay. Also, in the event that you find yourself needing to do it, you can use this as a snare as well. That's a topic for a whole other show, but anytime you've got a good piece of cable on your hands, there's a lot of different uses for that. Now, your best bet with this is to run it around whatever it is you're trying to cut. Keep your hands as wide apart as you can. Don't bring them too close together trying to do this. Keep them a little bit wide apart. Occasionally it's going to bind up. It's going to catch in that wood. Be patient. Don't try to pull it out. Loosen it up a little bit and then go back to work on it. If you keep pulling too hard, you're going to end up breaking it. There's too many points on these things that can give out. And then once you've broken it, you don't have a tool anymore. So you got to be careful using these things. But they can be useful. They're not the greatest thing in the world, but in an emergency, you do what you got to do. Another commonly misunderstood item in your survival kit is the survival mirror. The purpose of this mirror is in the event that you feel like you're about to be rescued and there might be a news crew, you want to make sure, fix your look a little bit, make sure you look your best before the cameras show up. That's not really what it's for. So the way this works is if you've gotten lost or injured and you're trying to get help, there's a search party out looking for you, what have you, you need to be able to signal the people that are looking for you. The way this thing works is you have to have certain things going for you. Either there has to be light pointed at you or you have to be facing in the direction of the sun. For example, if there's a search helicopter that's looking for you and they're using a spotlight, you can use this. One thing about mirrors that a lot of people don't realize is if I can see you in a mirror, you can see me. You cannot hide from the reflections in a mirror. So the way this thing works, and the reason it has a hole in the center, is so that you can make sure you're aiming it at whatever it is you're trying to signal. You're gonna look through the hole and you're gonna line it up with whatever it is you're trying to signal. Now, if the sun is out and the sun is pointed at you, what you're gonna do is you're gonna look up at the sun and then look at whatever it is that you're trying to signal. And you're gonna try to throw the reflection of the sun in that direction. If it's a spotlight, flashlight, whatever, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to look at whatever it is, whatever light source is out there, and you're going to try to reflect it back at whoever's carrying it. A signal mirror is dependent 100% on some kind of light source that you can throw in the direction of your searchers so that you can let them know where you are. But knowing how that works goes a long way toward making it effective. Next up, in things that you really need to know how to use before you have to, is water treatment tablets. These chlorine-based tablets create a chemical reaction that purifies water and allows it to be drinkable. The thing you have to know with these is this water is going to taste like it came out of a swimming pool. So it's probably a good idea to keep a flavor packet of some kind with you to make the water a little more palatable. But essentially, one of these tablets will treat up to 2 quarts of water. Now, the trick to knowing how to use them is this. The instructions on these say you put a tablet into your water and then you mix it for 10 minutes. I've got a standard canteen. We drop a tablet down in there and then we're going to shake this for 10 minutes. Now, these are the steps that you don't want to leave out. You have to do this the way it's instructed. Otherwise, you run a whole lot of risk. So we're going to shake this thing for 10 minutes. Then once we've done that, we're going to set it aside and it needs to just rest for 30 minutes. The chemicals in the tablets have to take effect and they have to have time to kill all of the bacteria and protozoa and things like that that are going to be in your water. Then after that 30 minutes, your water is safe to drink. Now, I will say this, I don't think I'd want to rely on these things for very long for water. I think I'd like to find other ways to purify my water. These things come with a lot of warnings. They're not really good for you. It's not good on your skin, so it's probably not good in your stomach. So this is a survival method, but it's not something I'd want to do long term. To get me by for a little bit would be great, but I would start looking for ways that I could boil and process water in a little bit more efficient way. Now, one of the cool things about the old military canteens, if you've got one like this, is there's a pocket on the front that was designed specifically for putting water treatment tablets in it. So if you've got one of these, take you a couple of tablets, put the pack in there, and you're ready to go. Next up, let's talk about these little multi-tools that come in a lot of these things. These things have been marketed as like the perfect gift for men and all that kind of stuff. It's, this little sheet of metal it's supposed to be able to use as a wrench and a saw and a knife and all that kind of stuff. The best way to use this is like this. I feel like these things are complete junk, but I do want to try something. I want to give it a shot. An idea came to me about a way that this might actually be a viable tool. See, one of the issues I've got with this is they have sharp edges all the way around them. If you think you're going to use this to loosen a bolt or something, and you're going to end up injuring yourself in a way that's going to create even more problems than you had before. But I want to try something. I came up with this idea. I want to see if it'll work, and maybe we can make this into something useful. So bear with me on this. Let's try this out. So for this idea, you're going to want to find a fairly green stick. Normally, I don't like taking down fresh green stuff, just for an example, but for this, you do need a fairly green stick. Now I'm going to tie off a little bit of cordage here like this. Let's come down here. All right, so this thing has a little edge right here. I'm going to use this to kind of cut into my wood. See if I can do this without killing myself. And this is where I say these things are a little problematic because they're not the most effective thing in the world. And I'm trying to do this without injuring myself, as I said before. All right, so we got a good split going there. That's why I put this cordage on here to keep it from going too far. So in the event that I want to use, say, the bladed side of this thing, I can put this down in here like this. Get it as far as it'll go here. I'll wrap some more of my cord around this. Come up here to the top. See if we can't tighten that down a little bit. Do a couple little wraparounds here like this. And then I want to tie this off. So I have to show you something. I don't know if you can see that or not. That's blood on my finger. Trying to get this tool set up to be safely usable, I ended up getting a small cut. So you can see where the problems come in with something like this. All right, and there we have it. I took a tool that was essentially a useless piece of garbage and then took it in a different direction than what it was intended for and turned it into kind of a small chores tomahawk. I can use this to cut up small items or to make some kindling or what. I can clean a fish with it. I can do whatever I need to do. I've got this little sharp edge here. I've got a little screwdriver edge here. Now I've got some leverage if in the event that I need to do that. I can make adjustments here to this tool. Oh, look at that, even more blood. I can make adjustments to this tool that will allow me to use the functions a little bit better because now I've got a handle. Whereas before all I had was this thing that I was having to hold on to sharp objects that were causing me injury. If I'm going to keep this item and use it, this is how I'm going to use it. I'm going to make it into a more effective tool. And while it's not a perfect thing, it's better than it was before, and it's better than nothing. Now, another seriously misunderstood item that comes in almost every survival kit is a whistle. Most people look at this, chunk it to the side and go, why in the world do I need a whistle? It's a kid's toy. Most people, all they can associate a whistle with is either a traffic cop that's trying to get your attention or a kid running around making enough noise to make everybody insane. It's kind of a bold statement, but a whistle could be one of the most important things in your kit, and it may be the one thing that you stand the most chance of needing. So let me explain that. Now, let me start off by telling you this. The biggest mistake that most people make when it comes to the whistle in their survival kit is leaving it in the survival kit. Then by the time you realize you need it, it's probably too late. There are two primary things that you're going to need your whistle for in a survival situation. So in order for it to be where you need it, when you need it, you're going to want to put it somewhere where you can access it. Either hang it from your backpack strap or from your jacket zipper or someplace where you can get at it when you need it. Here are the two primary scenarios for why you're going to need this whistle. One of them is, let's say you're hiking and you encounter a wild animal. This may not be the perfect solution if you come across a cougar or a bear, but one thing that does have a tendency to repel wildlife is shrill and unnatural noises. If you're on a hiking path and you stumble across a wild animal and you guys are staring each other down trying to figure out who's going to give, this may save your life. If it's right here, clipped to your backpack, you just bring it up, blow that whistle, and you stand a pretty good chance of running that animal off. I'm not advising you to go challenging wildlife with a whistle. What I'm telling you is, if you have it, you might as well try it and hope for the best. So that's scenario number one. The reason you need it close at hand is if you are faced with a wild animal, you're not going to have a chance to go hunting for your whistle, and that's probably not going to be the first thing to come to mind. But if it's right there hanging from your backpack strap and you get a chance to pick it up and blow it, that could be the few seconds that makes all the difference in the world. The second scenario that you might need your whistle for, and you might want it readily available, is in the event that you find yourself injured. Let's say you're hiking, you stumble off the edge of the trail, and you take a fall. Maybe you've got some broken bones. This could be the thing that saves your life. There are countless cases of people going missing on a hike only to be found not far from the trail. Sometimes they're found alive. Sometimes it's not until the spring thaw that somebody realizes that there's a body only a few dozen yards off of the trail. You can call for help for about probably 15 minutes max if you're yelling, before your voice is going to give out, before you're probably going to sustain some kind of injury to your vocal cords as a result of screaming for help. With a whistle, you can blow that whistle with every breath. You don't have to make a lot of effort. You can simply sit there and blow your whistle over and over again and hope that somebody coming down that trail is going to hear it and realize there's someone in distress. This needs to be a habit that anytime you go exploring or hiking, that you take your whistle, attach it to your gear, and have it ready to use. It's a simple little thing. Most people think it's a toy. This is a chance to call for help or to scare off something that under other circumstances might have hurt you. If you've ever had to break into one of these survival kits and use the items inside, I'd love to hear the stories about it. Leave me a comment down below and tell me about it. Tell me, did the items live up to your expectations, or did they fail you when you needed them most? So that's it for this video, our evaluation of a few items that you're going to find in just about any off-the-shelf survival kit. Tell me which item you found to be the most interesting, or if you had absolutely no idea that you might have been using it wrong. Now, I will say one thing. If you think you might need a survival kit, it is absolutely best to build it yourself, not rely on something that someone else put together that's just like everything else out there. Individualized items are always a good idea, but there are certainly items that you can do without, and you can use that space for something that's more efficient or practical. If you'd like to see me do a video of building a custom survival kit that I only put items in there that I think I might actually use, leave me a comment and tell me about it. Maybe I'll do that for a future video. Until the next time, prepare for the world that you live in, not the one you wish existed, and we'll see you around.